Hello, Garland Nixon, and we're going to talk about some of these imperial exceptions that the Trump team is instituting, and we're going to talk about some domestic politics and foreign politics. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here with Jamal Thomas. And for all of you who may not know, which I'm sure you all do, Jamal is also streaming this live. So both of our channels, make sure that you, if you are a member of my channel, go over to Jamal's channel and join. If you're a member of Jamal's channel, make sure you come over and subscribe here so that we can get all the good, fun stuff. Jamal's on every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. Great stuff. Make sure you check it out. I always do. And if you don't get a chance at that time, he cuts the videos up with his various guests and releases them later. So there's a lot of good stuff to keep you busy and watch. All right, Jamal, let's go here. One of the things I mentioned the words imperial exception, and here's what I mean. Trump says, look, I ain't going to do censorship. It's not going to happen. We're sick and tired of this stinking censorship, right? That ain't going to happen. Okay. Except, of course, Israel. That's what I mean by an imperial exception. It is. Now, here's my thought on it before I throw it to you. You know, First Amendment, free speech, censorship is about what? Very specifically, the First Amendment protects unpopular speech. So if you say there's going to be no censorship on COVID. Well, I know that a lot of conservatives were upset that they didn't feel that they got to properly question COVID and they got thrown off. Okay, so that's something that you don't want censorship to happen on. That's something that's not unpopular for the Trump administration. Okay, then you say Ukraine. Well, a lot of the Trump people and MAGA people were censored on Ukraine because they were questioning Ukraine, right? Okay, so if you say you're against censorship, I'm not going to judge you based on Ukraine because you're only allowing yourself to say what you couldn't say before. I'm not going to judge you on not censoring COVID because you felt like you got censored on COVID. I'm going to judge you on things that would be unpopular to you. That means the only real way that I can judge whether the Trump administration is actually opposed to censorship is when something comes out, such as Israel and Zionism, that they feel very strongly about. Do they allow people to say things that they're uncomfortable with? And I think we got the answer to that, don't we, Jamal?
Enhanced interrogation. That's what it puts me in mind, enhanced interrogation. Where the Bush administration would change the language and the name of something in order to try to make it look like it's not what it is. Okay, you were torturing people. We tortured some folks, as Obama said. But you called it enhanced interrogation. And by doing it, you were able to kind of skirt this legal thing that you're trying to get around that is illegal under our own laws. And they were able to do it, just changing the legal context of it, or the legal naming of it. Okay, well, Trump is doing the same thing with anti-Semitism. You have people criticizing the government of Israel, not Jews, the government of Israel. If they so happen to be Jews, fair enough, has nothing to do with our criticism. We're criticizing the government of Israel for taking actions that are fundamentally barbaric. It's that. And, as I pointed out when Vance was giving that speech where he's, standing on his high horse, imperially on his high horse, as he's talking to Europe. And my first thing was like, okay, well, wait till it gets to your prize pony. Wait till it gets to your prize pony. Are you going to have this verve and vigor in going after people who are effectively using censorship to go after things that they don't necessarily want those people to talk about? And of course, when it gets to the US, the Israel first president, Donald Trump, turns around and cracks down on speech criticizing the state of Israel for committing a genocide. Just amazing. But again, I expected this. I don't have this expectation that people are going to be honest, fair, just. They should be. I hope they are. If you're honest with me, I'm going to be honest with you. You give me space to do that. But I don't expect that, especially in the political context. In the political context, I think people want to get their agenda accomplished, regardless of what's right and wrong in whatever their agenda is. For me, this is one of those things where we have an Israel first policy. We're going to push that policy through, and we are going to call legitimate criticism of a government taking barbaric action as anti-Semitism. No, you're absolutely right. You're so right. You're not judging them by how they feel about something else. You're judging them when it comes on their own priorities, and in the context of those priorities, whether or not they have this even playing field of apprehension and point of view. And your point is, dude, we're on the sideline, perched at the edge of the world, looking at this, calling balls and strikes. This is a strike. This is a strike.
Exactly. And, if I'm grading you, I'm not going to grade you on anything other than the standard that you set, right? You're setting standards for yourself. You're coming in, you're going to other people, mouthing off to the Europeans. And here's what kills me. We all watch, and all of the MAGA Trump people, we watch this 60 Minutes. And it was like stunning, there's Germans and somebody, quote, insulted somebody. And they're like, oh, they insulted someone. So we must, and the guys got lines and like folders, walls and walls of folders. Oh, how many investigations are you doing for people that insulted somebody online? Oh, we're about 3,000 right now. And it's like, what happened? Well, they insulted someone. So that could stay up for a long time. Then you see these guys like with guns and shields. And I'm like, because somebody insulted somebody online, you're sending in a SWAT team as though it's dangerous. Somebody like typed, you're a jerk. We better get a SWAT team in. This guy could be dangerous. And it's like a little old woman who's like 57 years old. And she like comes out in a dress like, oh, what's going on there? Down, you maggot, get on the street. Whap. Beat her up and drag her away. I'm being a little over facetious, but you get my point. What is the danger? They could have literally, to be quite frank, it could have been like a traffic ticket or something, like when you run these red lights where you get a letter in the mail. You have officially violated something online. You could pay this fine or send this back. They could have did that. No. So we watched that and we're like, well, that's pretty terrible. The whole thing of it, but it's all terrible, right?
Yeah.
And then J.D. Vance reads them the riot act. You're standing up against what you say, democracy. And I'm at the same time, I'm like, and exactly as you said, they come back and they're like, oh, you think that's something? You think sending a SWAT team is hold my beer, as they say. We're going to take people, snatch all of their rights. And now we see SWAT teams going into dorms at Columbia University.
Are they
grabbing people, dragging them out? Oh, they're sending teams of military-clad garbed guys now, and so they're going and grabbing people out and literally throwing them out of the country. And I'm like, what the hell were you talking about, J.D. Vance, you hypocrite? Yep. What the hell are you? Who in the world? Now, the lucky thing for them is Europe can't call them on it because Europe agrees with, the whole Zionism thing. They're down with that. But as far as the rest of us, I would imagine there's even some people in the coalition of Trump who's looking at him saying, hey, and I see that online. There are a lot of people in Trump's coalition who are not thrilled with Zionism, believe it or not. I don't know if you see that online, but I do.
I would say I haven't, but that doesn't mean they're not there. It just means that the other ones are very vocal in their advocacy for Trump. Germany is, it's fascinating. That's such a German solution, right? Send cops to somebody's door for insulting somebody online. That is phenomenal. They're complicated. Like after the Hitler thing, it screws with the country's sense of self and what they allow in the country. It's like we would never forget about Hitler. Even if it means going after people online for saying bad things about other people online. It's like so hyperactive. And we can kind of see it here in the United States. I mean, like if you look at civil rights and you see, DI programs, you see all of this stuff where what people need is economic realism. They need economic populism in regards to what they need as a political party in order to push back. What they get are DEI programs. And, we're going to deal with civil rights. We're going to focus on civil rights. Well, they do that because that's the thing they won on, and they feel the most confident on because that's the thing they want on, and people's identities are very important to them. I'm saying Germany is doing something very similar in this overreaction to the stuff that's happening online. And you're right, we have no leg to stand on and criticizing them, considering we're doing the same thing with the prize pony of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, but in this case, Donald Trump himself. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the notion that you grab somebody who is legal to be here and chuck them out of the country is astonishing. Like that should not be under, like you're laying in your room, somebody comes to your house, puts their hands on you, take you away and throw you out the country. Why? Yes, you were here legally, but because you said bad things about a foreign power, that we ignore the First Amendment and us doing that. That is a threat to democracy. That is a threat to any kind of democratic order, that you have a prize pony of a country that for whatever particular reason, regardless of what they do, that you can't criticize. That's astonishing. No, that's astonishing.
And here's the thing. And like what they got people for was organizing for Palestine. Organizing. Hey, let's get together. And might I add, it's two levels down, because number one, if you want to criticize government, the main thing they're criticizing is government policy about Iran. Why are we about Israel? We're sending the bombs, we're backing them, we're supporting them in the UN and all that. Our policy is terrible, right? So they're criticizing government policy, right? But how are they doing it? They're organizing protests. Well, not only is the speech protected to say I disagree with government policy, protesting is a form of speech that's also protected. You know what I'm saying? So what you're saying is we're not going to let you say it, and we're not going to let you protest, which is one of the most recognized and protected forms of free speech, to protest against the government, to go out and say I disagree with the government, to hold up a sign, to walk and do different things to push back against it. And now what Trump, so all we got is this. Look, the things that we agree on, COVID or Ukraine, you're allowed to protest. The things that we don't like, we don't think that you should protest against, you're not allowed to. Not that we'll tolerate it. It's we will. There's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. If you say, when I'm in power, I will prosecute you and persecute you for exercising free speech if it's something that I don't like. And if it's something that I'm good, I'll help you out. We knew at the time, if you were to run out screaming with a I hate Trump sign, or let's say you were to go out and say, we're organizing a bunch of people. Why? To protest against the evilness of Putin. And you had all these terrible stuff, foul language about Putin. Had him, he's a demon, he's a monster. You could have had an anti-Putin protest and done anything. We're going to occupy, all around the Russian embassy. Block the streets, do all kind of illegal things. Why? Because we hate Putin. The Democrats would have been there. MSNBC would have loved it. Joe Biden would have spoke at the, at the event.
Right. Right.
But they would have said, well, but it's still legal for them to block off the street. But they're protesting against Putin. We must protect their First Amendment rights. And they said, now next week we're going to the Israeli embassy. Oh, no, you ain't. Oh, no, you are not. So that's, to me, you got exactly the same thing. You've got a regime in that says, you don't have free speech. It's just the speech that I choose to protect is different in some ways. It's always Israel, but in other words, you got nothing when it comes to advancing free speech. You have not moved one step forward.
Agreed. 1,000% agreed. If they just disagree on what they hold dear. This is always like the thing with Republicans in the budget, for example, where it's like, oh, Republicans care about the budget. They do not. They have, like, multiple times, budgets don't matter. I think that was Dick Cheney was that deficits don't matter. Yeah, deficits don't matter. Like they use political rhetoric for things and try to shape themselves or something, but it's not real. It's like, okay, we have our different prize pony that we want to protect as opposed to the one that you want to protect. Okay, that doesn't make you better. That's still bad. I mean, this puts me in the mind of, like, in the old days where blacks were marching, holding signs, I am a man. Government did not want them to do that. They did not like the fact that they were doing that. And Again, if they got this aggressive with it, okay, what does that look like in practice? Okay, well, maybe, I mean, granted, they were murdering people or beating the devil out of people on bridges and whatnot. I guess I'm saying you're right. This idea that this is somehow different. Okay, it's different, but it's a sameness of difference. It's just a different pony. It's just a completely different pony. They get no points for this. In fact, they lose points for this.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, exactly. They lose points because they know better. They don't have an excuse. They know better, and they told us they were going to do better. Which, of course, as you said, and now if you think about the civil rights movement at the time, every time Martin Luther King or somebody came, whoever it was, what would they say? You're working for the Russians, right? You're doing communism or something, and they'd be like, I'm just like, people are getting lynched here. We need an anti-lynching law. You're dying. That's what the communists in the Soviet Union are saying. You're speaking. Yep. So what did they do when somebody came up with a legitimate social issue? Hey, people are getting lynched for like nothing. We need an anti-lynching law. They didn't say, well, an anti-lynching law that would be the moral thing to do. They said, the reason you're doing this, what you're really saying is we love the Soviet Union. They simply reinterpreted their motivations or their words, and then they used their straw man reinterpretation to say, therefore, we got to go out and shoot Martin Luther King, which is basically what they did, or whoever else it was, right? Yeah. So now somebody says, I think they're committing a genocide or something here. That's probably not good. I'm opposing that. We're going to go push against it. And what do they say? They reinterpret what they said. What you're really saying is you hate Jews. That's what you're really saying, is you don't like Jews. That ain't what they said. In fact, a bunch of the people literally are Jews, like rabbis. Grab this rabbi up, beat him up a little bit with a stick, take them away. Why? Because they hate Jews and it's anti-Semitism. So it's really, if you go back to the 60s, the government's not doing anything. They have done nothing different. Nothing has changed. You reinterpret what the person is saying to mean something that you could persecute them for.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good way of saying it. You said it so much better than I did. You said it so much better. You're absolutely right. They reinterpreted this notion of, we are arguing about a genocide. And it says, no, you're not. You're arguing about anti-Semitism. And what you're saying is anti-Semitic. It's like, well, that's not really what we said. No, that's not what we're arguing about. We're arguing about a genocide. As I pointed out, there was a clip that Chuck Schumer is making the rounds, where Chuck Schumer is like, yeah, they cut off heads and they rape women and they attacked the Jews. And as I pointed out, they were Israelis that just so happened to be Jewish. There's a difference in the way that you put that. They didn't attack them because they were Jews. They were attacking them because they were occupying their territory. They're they're running an open air ghetto in a prison camp. Prison camp, apartheid state. That's why you're being attacked. It's not your Jewishness, if that makes sense. And so you're absolutely right. It's like, yeah, we're going to misinterpret, reevaluate what they're actually fighting about. And we're going to find the worst thing in the world that we could use to call them in order to attack them for their protests on something that is legitimate, such as apartheid, or for that matter, open air ghetto. That's exactly what they do. That's exactly what they did for civil rights. You're perfectly right. You are perfectly right. Beautifully put.
Well, and even that, you got to make it up. Oh, they're cutting off throwing babies in the ovens and cutting off heads and babies. And then you look back like a month later and it's like, well, that never happened. Israel, like literally has admitted something about the Samson option and killing but we don't know how many Israelis were killed by their own stuff, but some of them were. Then they buried all these cars, so we couldn't find, you know what I mean? There are a lot of legitimate questions about October 7th. Certainly, I'm not going to defend and say, no, there weren't atrocities committed and then there wasn't violence. It appears there was, but we don't know to what extent because of all of the propaganda, right? And as you said, you got to take into context that to these people, it was a war because they felt that they were being oppressed. Okay, that's a legitimate conversation that we're not allowed to have. Now, let me throw this at you. Donald Trump said, I'm going to paraphrase, judge me by the wars that I stop, you know what I mean? And the wars that I don't start, etc. He gave us the standard to judge him by.
Yeah.
Yemen, your thoughts?
Yeah, Trump's going on a killing spree in Yemen, just like Saudi Arabia before him, just like Joe Biden before him, where what Yemen wants is effectively stop supporting this war, this genocide. We need to stop supporting it. And considering the U.S. funds 75 to 80% of what Israel uses to pursue their war of their genocide, their ethnic cleansing, then it is the U.S. is the principal actor in this conflict. If we tell them to stop, they stop because they have to stop because they can't keep it up without our continued support. So Yemen is like, okay, well, anything that crosses the Red Sea is a target, if indeed it's helping Israel in some way. And so they've been going after ships in the Red Sea and have diverted a huge amount of traffic out of the Red Sea because they don't necessarily get hit. Instead of dealing with the main thing, which was, okay, let's stop the war, something Donald Trump said he was going to do anyway, had a ceasefire, didn't defend his own ceasefire from Israel's intrusion and destruction of that ceasefire agreement and that deal. He effectively allows the war to continue despite the fact that Israel is the one that is obviously at this point not fulfilling the obligations of the ceasefire deal, not even the first segment of it. Trump, as opposed to dealing with it there, which is effectively the root cause of it, he decides, I'm going to show Yemen who's the boss is, and I'm going to go and kill a lot of women and children in Yemen. And I say women and children because the reality of it is the weapon systems that have been doing this have been going for the last decade. Saudi Arabia under Obama was attacking Yemen. They weren't even as strong. And Yemen still continued to do what they're doing, meaning nothing of the bombing has stopped them from doing this, meaning the only people you're killing are women and children. Any random day you may hit a soldier. But for all intents and purposes, none of this has stopped, inhibited what Yemen and so our Jesus Christ, I'm butchering the name.
We go with the Houthis for now.
Okay, we'll go with the Houthis. It's Ansara. I'm butchering the name. They are continuing to do what they're doing. Ansarallah. But they're continuing to do what they do. Meaning none of this matters. None of this is doing anything in real terms to stopping them from doing what they're doing. And if I remember correctly, they hadn't even started back firing at ships.
No,
Trump did this action before they started back doing any of this stuff. And so this is a fool's errand. It is not going to accomplish Trump's objectives. It, in fact, damages his objectives because, as you pointed out, he said, I'm going to end wars, not start them. Okay, well, this is starting a war. This is definitively starting a war. And you lied to the Muslim community when you looked them in the eye, shook their hand, and said, I'm going to end this war, when you really knew you were not going to end this war. You were okay with a temporary ceasefire to get the hostages and then resuming this ethnic cleansing campaign by the Netanyahu government. You're perfectly right. He's starting a war, not ending one.
Well, meanwhile, and here's the other great irony, the great contradiction. You're on the phone with Putin. Hey, we want a ceasefire. Well, let's see. Let me see if I have a point of reference. You did kind of have a ceasefire 3 days before you came to power. And you violated it last night. They started bombing like the night or 2 nights before he talks to Vladimir Putin for a ceasefire. If I'm Putin, I'm like, I really don't think maybe I can trust this guy to hold a ceasefire. You literally have violated a ceasefire with no remorse. Not so whatsoever. Oh, well, they got a ceasefire. It's over. Okay, and I'm listening to you. Not only do I know that within the last 2 days you violated a ceasefire, I also know that within the last 2 days you completely ignored. I know I've been kind of studying. Yeah, it's my job. I'm in another country and I got to study the guy that I'm going to talk to on the phone, his politics, everything. They've reviewed that and they're like, he made these policies before he came in. And it was like, judge me by the wars I don't start. I'm going to be the peacemaker. He said, I'm going to talk to Xi Jinping and together we'll bring peace to the world, with the exception of Yemen and Israel. Last time I checked, they were parts of the world. So if I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to, bull crap with you. I'm going to say, yeah, perhaps we need to get some a committee together to put together another committee to talk about committees. And I'm going to just buy all the time I can, because why would Vladimir Putin sign a ceasefire of any kind with a guy who's violating the ceasefire and a guy who told his own voters, I'm not starting any wars, with no remorse, without thinking, with no apologies. He didn't go on and say, hey, sorry, guys, I know I said I wasn't starting any wars, but no, he just asked, hey, here's a picture of Trump. And he's in the situation room watching, and he's like this with headphones on, and they're bombing Yemen, killing civilians. And I'm looking online, seeing some people online saying, hey, that ain't what I voted for. The truth really is it is. You voted for empire. So you kind of really don't know that's what you voted for,
Yeah.
but it is. That's why I don't vote for Republicans or Democrats.
Yeah, I agree with you 1,000%. I want to lay it on thicker than that, actually. I want to lay it on thicker even than you've laid it on, and you're perfectly right in everything you just said. The person who is trying to get a deal with Vladimir Putin is head of a country that has been killing Russians for the last 3 years, where you had 100,000, maybe more Russians die in this war. Those are still Russians that are dead as a direct result of the actions between Europe and the United States. That same state is now saying, hey, trust me. You can trust me. I'm an honest guy. I know they say I lie on TV, but don't believe them. Believe me, you can trust me. I'm Donald Trump. Okay, I don't know anybody in their right mind that will trust Donald Trump to take the dog for a walk, let alone come into some kind of ending of a conflict just based on some kind of phone call, some kind of phone conversation. And doing this while simultaneously ignoring the fact that Israel is blowing off a ceasefire deal in the same way that we blew off the Minsk agreements 1 and 2. So you are effectively saying, hey, I know we've been killing you for these last 3 years. I know you've lost maybe 100,000, if not more troops. I know that, right now I am totally blowing off a ceasefire agreement that I worked out between Israel and this other country. But trust me, how do you do that? How do you make that argument with a straight face? Now, Trump probably could do it. I believe he could do that. Do it. But it's a bit rich that you're asking a country that you've been killing their people and that can see you openly ignoring a negotiation in the same way that same country ignored those negotiations around Minsk when it wasn't convenient for us because we didn't necessarily want Ukraine to come to some kind of solution, and they thought Zelensky would get popped in the head if he tried to do it by some kind of Nazi. I don't know how you do that. I don't even know why Putin clearly is not going to believe Trump, regardless of what they say, right? He's untrustworthy. He showed himself to be in the same way, oddly enough, or ironically enough, that they showed themselves to be trustworthy around Minsk. We are all together on this. We don't have to pay attention to what the Russians think because the Russians are on the outs. And so we can ignore an agreement that was hammered out by multiple states on the world stage because we don't like the other part of that agreement. Okay, that's not the way agreements work. And if you're showing this level of, degeneracy, this level of dishonesty in a similar way that you guys did it before on Minsk, then why would they go into Minsk 3? Why would they do it? That's your point. I think your point is right.
Yeah, your own voters can't trust you. Why should I? If you think about it, I remember Joe Biden came in and within like a week or 4 days or something, he was bombing Syria, right? Trump comes in and but Joe Biden's never going to promise that he's not going to do a war because, if anything, he promised that he would have a war because Joe Biden's a warmongering neocon, right? Okay, so he made it 4 days. Trump made it, 4 weeks? Yeah. And Trump promised. Look, you can trust me, guys. Have I ever lied to you? There's no way I'm starting a war. I'm a peacemaker. Vote for me, and I will bring peace to the earth. Then he gets on the phone with Xi Jinping, or at least we read that he's been saying, I'm going to bring peace. I'm the peacemaker. Judge me by the peace I bring. The wars I don't start. 4 weeks.
Yep.
4 weeks. That's how long he made it. 4 weeks in, and you know what? Okay. Even if you're going to do it, right? Man up. If you're going to do it, if Trump's going to go bomb somebody, he should say, go on Truth Social, whatever, right? And say, look, I know I said I wasn't starting any wars. I know I said, even though it'd be bullcrap, but Yemen's doing this. It'll be a lie. And this other guy's doing this. I got no choice. I got to stand for America, blah, blah. Do that. I'm not going to agree with you. I'm going to know it's all a bunch of crap, but at least you will acknowledge to me that you have some respect for me. At least what you'll be saying to me is, you know what? I know I made you this promise, but, and then you give me a bunch of bull crap. I at least expect that. Nope. Nothing. No acknowledgement. No, I know I said this. No, okay, I'm going back on my promise, but not really, because we've got to protect the world from Yemen or whatever. But none of that. Simply, Yemen's going to find out. Yes, sirree. They're going to see the power of the United States. We're going to obliterate, annihilate them. We'll continue to bomb them until whatever. And you don't even acknowledge that this runs counter to what you were screaming from the highest mountain. You were on a corner soapbox screaming for peace. You had on a peace sign. You look like a 1969 hippie. Yeah, peace is all over the world. All we are asking is be at peace a chance. That was Trump at a Trump rally. And now he's, well, we got to bomb him. Oh, bomb him, Trump. It's, but you know what I hope, though? I hope that this may not sound good. I hope this dashes all hope in America. I hope he just crushes the final little bit of, you and I already would likely vote for the Democrats, really, right? Because we already know. But I hope this crashes and smushes all hope of somebody who thought either the Democrats or the Republicans that they could put him in office and oh boy, they were going to take us down the road of peace. Your thoughts?
Trump could have. That's the wild part. Like, so some of the reporting had it that Donald Trump's had a person that was trying to reach out to Hamas directly in order to negotiate directly. Israel didn't like it. They found out about it. They outed the fact that this was taking place. That guy eventually gets fired. If his instincts was to put the guy in, his instincts were right. The problem is that he decided Israel first, that Israel matters more than America in regards to U.S. foreign policy. The idea that we're bombing for Israel because it wants to have a genocide is outrageous. I mean, that is effectively why. I mean, keep in mind, as I pointed out, the Houthis are doing this in order to be the only group that says a genocide is a red line. We don't want that. We don't like that. We think that's bad. And our response is, shut up about that genocide. Shut up about that genocide. So we're going to bomb you and kill people in order to prevent you from trying to prevent this thing. I get it. It's inconvenient to have somebody firing in the shipping lanes. It is also inconvenient to murder a lot of people, especially for the people being murdered. And, you know, so this is not a rah-rah, but this is understanding why they're doing it. And a president who said, I'm willing to talk to various people and to reach out to those groups. How are you ending up here if that's true? How are you ending up here where you are effectively getting on your war paint and going out and killing a lot of women and children just for hashtag reasons? Look, I wouldn't even respect Trump if he did that, frankly. Look, even if I don't vote for you, even if you don't give a vote, which Trump didn't give a vote, by the way,
right,
you still have a responsibility to me and everybody else in the country to do what's right and what's good and what's best. I don't believe for a moment that it's in our best interest to take an Israel first policy and go bomb in Yemen, or what Yemen wants should be our policy anyway, especially when it's in the context of the U.S. So what's in our best interest? I mean, is it really in our best interest to end up in a war with Iran? No, under no set of circumstances is it in our best interest. Even if we could win, meaning even if we could marshal a million military and go somehow try to conquer Iran, that is still not in our interest. I don't even think Americans would be okay with that, frankly. I'm trying to point out that this notion of an Israel first policy, where we are towing their line even to the point of the destruction of civil liberties, or for that matter, dragging this country in order to use military might, something that is supposed to be reserved for the protection of the United States, is outrageous and is a complete repudiation of what he was saying on the campaign trail. Again, just because you're good on one issue, okay, you get it right on Russia and Ukraine. Great on that issue. It has nothing and no bearing on any other issue that they're relaying upon, especially when they are picking and choosing, not necessarily having an even-handed, honest keel in the way that they're looking at these events. So in this case, oh, we're going to do censorship because, you know, you're going after a prize pony. But in this other case, we agree with our masses and our supporters. So, you know, You can talk about Ukraine, you can talk about COVID, those things are fine now. They're missing the point. But I guess my thing is, I've gotten so cynical that I assume that they're going to lie. I assume that they're not going to care about what's fair and what's honest. I mean, I watched them cheat Sanders, for God's sake. I watched them try to put Trump in a cage. I watched them decide, well, we need to take Sputnik and RT off air because they're giving a perspective that we don't necessarily like, even though they were tiny networks. And so it's like the idea of Trump coming in and me believing that he's going to be honest. I don't know why his supporters thought he was. I really don't. But they did. I mean, and maybe that says something about, the political center at the time, the Obamas of the world, the Joe Manchins of the world, the John McCains of the world, the Lindsey Grahams, the Ted Cruzes, that are these kind of standard establishment politicians that the public has fundamentally lost faith or trust in, and so are going to the wings of the party. And so maybe they look at him as, okay, well, these other people weren't straight with me. I didn't have any real political clout in backing these guys. Maybe this guy, he was different, who talks to me like a regular American. Maybe that guy is being straight with me. Maybe that's it. I mean, give me your take on that. Well, why? I'm shocked that they're shocked, frankly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're shocked by this? I don't quite get it.
You know what? It's like, you ever watch a movie and like some people are stranded or something like that in a plane, their plane crashes on an island, right? And they're trying, okay, well, we need to do this and that doesn't work. Well, maybe we can find what, and they get to the last thing and they're like, well, if this doesn't work, we're all going to die. And they maybe we can start a fire, and the guy drops his last match in the puddle, and they realize, holy shit, that was our last chance. We're screwed. We're all going to die, right? I think that's kind of what we're looking at here. I think we're looking at some people who were down to their last hope. And I'm thinking, yeah, if Donald Trump's your last hope, you're the world deep in serious trouble, brother. Yeah. You are in deep trouble. That's like Biden, like those who thought Kamala Harris was their last hope. You know what I mean? Oh boy, if she wins, we got it made, right? But they were hopeless. And along comes Donald Trump, and he says some things, right? He actually said things you're not allowed to say. Hey, right. Judge me by the peace I bring. Oh, finally, that's what they're thinking, right? And on and on and on, right? And censorship, we can't have that. And he does all of these executive orders that we won't do censorship. Boom, here's an executive order. Well, that fixed everything. He wrote an executive order. We know we got it made, right? Now, here we are, 1 month. 1 month in. 1 month in. How are we doing on censorship?
Chucking people out the country.
How are we doing on stopping wars? Do we need? I keep going. Now, let me add this. Bombing Yemen is very, very expensive. We're talking billions of dollars. They're firing missiles that are millions of dollars each, flying at all these, maintaining I forgot how many billions of dollars it costs a month, or hundreds of millions a month to keep an aircraft carrier on station, right? Okay. Yes, we're going to save money. We're not going to spend money madly like the Democrats do. We're saving money. We're laying people off. Those soccer moms who work at the Department of Agriculture, doggone it, they got to get fired. Because we got to save money. Except when it comes to Israel. How many billion? And they're like, what are you going to do what are you going to do, Trump? Well, let's send Israel another $7 billion worth of missiles this month. And we're going to keep these aircraft carriers and stuff on station, $100, $200, $300 million. Then we're going to fire $100 million worth of weapons a night. So you're spending money unlimited after you told us you had to fire a bunch of soccer moms at the Department of Agriculture to save money.
Yeah.
And then you're spending money unlimited on a war that you said you wouldn't do. And as you said, when we look at it, we're like, what's in it for us? MAGA, make America. We've got to think about America first. MIGA, make Israel great again. America ain't in it. You know what I mean? So you look at it and you're like, by every metric that you gave us, you flunked, you failed. And it's like, yeah, but I already won and I'm in. So it doesn't really matter now, does it? You've been had, you've been schnookered, right? And as I said, and the Russians got to be looking over there saying, if I'm the Russians, here's what I know. You tried to punch me out and it didn't work. So here's the plan. Let's put punching Russia, beating them up on hold. That ain't working real good. Let's try to take China. We were going to take Russia out first, and then we'll take China. Well, that ain't working. Okay, here's the plan. Let's go take China out, and then we can get back to Russia later. If I'm Russia, I'm like, come on, do you think I'm stupid? I just know that you put me on hold so you can come back and get me later. Unfortunately, as I've been saying, everything the U.S. empire does to try to save itself only makes it go down quicker.
Agreed. Because this is absurd politics. And I don't mean ending the war is absurd. Ending the war is a good thing. I mean, a lot of people are dying. So just on the basis of that alone, that is a good thing. If Donald Trump, honest to God, believes that Russia is in a mind space or mindset that, oh, the US is coming back, now we can, join arms and go running like Boris Yeltsin and Bill Clinton, they are out of their minds. Like, I don't think they realize how much poison, like bad blood, exists at the point where you get all of these people killed in a war that never needed to happen. And just because it's Trump who's in there now doesn't mean it's going to be Trump later, or for that matter, that he's even a trustworthy figure. And so if you're Russia, look, I would say this. They got what they wanted on some level, kind of. For Trump to put out the ceasefire deal, and then for Russia to come back and give Trump this token fig leaf where he can run around saying, hey, I got a 30-day ceasefire on attacks on the energy infrastructure. Look at me, I'm Donald Trump. So I got something out of it, even, in this phone call. Okay, that was reneged upon almost immediately. And they effectively violated that quickly. Meaning Russia sees all of this. They're not idiots. Like they know that Trump is untrustworthy on the issue of Israel, and that resembles the way Minsk, in the way that we were saying, oh yeah, we'll back Minsk. Come to find out, we completely lied about it, completely didn't push it or back it. We just, let them just blow it off. If you're talking about looking at future events and you're thinking about your relationships, the idea that you go into a relationship with the US arm in arm is absurd. Or that they would somehow go against China, a country who they say we are closer than allies, is absurd. Like, it's almost like you're in an abusive relationship. The other person stopped hitting you because you broke up, and they're like, hey, I learned from my mistakes. Let's get back together. Your answer, if you have any sense of self, would be go F yourself. Yes, I accept that Russia will be willing to make overtures in order to kind of make amends between the two countries. I accept that they probably will restore diplomatic relations. But that is not the same thing as a relationship that you may have with, let's say, other BRICS countries. It is more so a relationship that allows diplomatic relations and some kind of token financial, conglomeration or some kind of financial organization where you're intermeshed on some level. But I don't believe for a moment that Russia is going to ever put itself in a position that it was where it trusts the US and go into, we're going to get closer to the US as opposed to China. We're going to get closer to the US as opposed to the BRICS nation. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And if Trump thinks that, he is more silly than what I thought he was. And I get the sense that on some level he thinks that. I mean, I could be wrong, but even this thing of, I'm going to have a conversation with Putin and we're going to work it out. Okay, dude, you don't even have your own guys on pace with Zelensky coming out, effectively repudiating. We have red lines. Okay, so the loser has feelings and red lines. But it is the loser, so they matter less. And yet, they're taking every moment to torpedo what Donald Trump is doing. They launched at the energy grid almost immediately. Zelensky came out, repudiated with Trump's red lines that he's saying that he agreed upon. Yeah, he needs to get his own house in order. Because I guess I said a lot. The point that I'm trying to make is on various levels, they can see what is going on in the context of the US. And they're not insane. It's that part. I mean, there are multiple levels where Trump doesn't quite have control of his house in the way that I think he does, especially with people like Zelensky or the foreign minister running around. I'm saying Russia sees all of them. They're not insane. They're not crazy.
Well, let's look at this. Okay, you got the Trump team, as it were, which is Trump and NATO, which are his so-called vassals. You've got Zelensky and his crew. and which is you've got that's all a whole weird coalition of neo-Nazis and extremists and various groups and oligarchs and people that want to fill their pockets there. Right. Some toxic group of lunatics. Okay, and then Trump. Putin says, look, we are Russians and we all agree on what needs to happen in the best interest of Russia, and that's what we're doing. Trump is saying, I'm going to negotiate for my coalition. Mm-hmm. Your coalition hates you, right? And you hate them. Let's be honest with it. Zelensky hates Trump, and Trump despises Zelensky. Starmer and Macron are trying to do everything they can to stick a shiv in Trump's back every chance they get, and Trump despises them. So you have a coalition. Trump is so-called leading a coalition, but everybody in his coalition, he despises him, them, they despise him, and the rest of the coalition is plotting against him. And the only hope he can have of holding that coalition together is raw power. Right? The only way that he can get people in his coalition to do what he wants them to do is to say, you better do it or I'll destroy your economy or I'll do whatever I need to do because I got raw power. That's all he's got. Raw power dealing with people. So is Trump really leading a coalition that even if Putin gets a so-called deal with Trump, that the people in his coalition are immediately going to be plotting before the deal would be gotten, they'd be plotting to undermine it. That would be assuming that Donald Trump had a plan. Even when he comes back home, he's got a blob of neocons in DC that don't want a deal. Mm-hmm. So you're violating your deal in the Middle East, right? Your ceasefire, you're violating that and starting wars. You're lying to your voters. So I'm seeing that you're untrustworthy. You got so-called leading a coalition that hates your guts, that's plotting on you every time you turn your back, who even if you get a deal, they ain't going to want to listen to you. And in your own government and back home is an absolute freaking mess. And you got this, to be quite frank. Well, before I go to that, your thoughts on that. I got something else I want to bring up, but your thoughts on that whole concept of Trump. Is he really leading this coalition? He hates all of them and they hate him.
He thinks he is, and he seemed to think that he can bend them to form in the way that he's been able to do other Republicans that are part of that blob that won't necessarily come out and contradict what Trump is saying on this issue. I mean, I'll give them credit. They have all hands have been on board on a very consistent refrain and message about either Ukraine and Zelensky, with a few caveats here and there by Rubio or something like that. I think he thinks he does. I think he thinks he has the ability to kind of bend them into shape, or at the very least, like what's going to be super interesting is Russia is not going to want mince agreements. They're going to want something more solid and something more enforceable. And what happens with Europe and the UN Security Council when Britain and France name gets called about whether or not they accept the negotiation that Trump comes up with or denies the negotiation that Trump comes up with. Also, what's interesting is what does Trump do if they deny it? If they come back with a no? What does Trump do? Like, I'm fascinated by that because at some point, this is going to hit the UN Security Council. At some point, people are going to have to sign their name on the dotted line with the US president saying, we want this agreement, even if it's going against our transatlantic allies, as they like to be called. I don't have an answer for it. I mean, he may try to make their economy scream if they do, and they may know. So they may either abstain or bend into shape in order to vote for the agreement. One last point on that. They are doing everything in their power now to stop the agreement. This idea of, we're going to put peacekeepers in after Trump comes to some kind of agreement. They're out of their minds. But they're saying that because they know, okay, if Russia hears that, Russia may not come to any kind of agreement because they're never going to accept peacekeepers from Europe in Ukraine in the way that they're talking about doing. Also, this other angle to this, dealing with peace process. When the ceasefire thing came out, it sounded as if, okay, well, this is a one-time deal to stop fighting. And people were like, okay, well, why would Putin do that? Well, because Putin is not going to do that. But what seems to be on course or pace now is a process that what started as a 30-day plan ended up being, okay, a token gesture in one sense with a peace process that's taking place in another. So a country that said they would never negotiate, they would never have peace, they would never do any of these things, There's reporting now that Ukraine is effectively coming to Jesus on this idea of territorial integrity, that you've lost the war, you've lost those properties in any kind of deal. Those things are going to have to be given up regardless of what Zelensky's saying. And this could be just like Chuck Schumer, where he goes out, puts a brave face. We are going to fight. We're going to have a government shutdown if that's what it needs to be. We're not going to pass a continuing resolution. You get a week before the shutdown. We believe in the shutdown. We're not going to pass a continuing resolution 2 days before the shutdown. We capitulate. We give up. We capitulate completely, utterly, and entirely. We give up. It was humiliating. And so Zelensky and some of these guys may be going out playing a script, knowing full well that they do not have the capacity or the power to push back against Trump if Trump indeed says it's over. So I don't know. I would say, though, that the fact that they're in a peace process now, whereas beforehand, 30-day ceasefire, is different. That's not what it was intended to be prior. It is something new. So I think it ultimately was positive. I think the fact that they talk is positive.
Certainly, I agree with that. I agree that it's positive. If they're talking, they ain't shooting. Now, let me throw this at you. We've got a few minutes left, not much. One of the things I said earlier was, you know what? There's one in a paradoxical kind of way. One of the great things of Trump, violating all of his promises is maybe it'll snatch that last little bit of hope people have that somehow maybe the Democrats or the Republicans are going to keep their word, and you can vote them in, and they'll really make a change and take us in the right direction, right? Which ain't happening. They need that hope snatched out from under them, right? And Trump's doing a pretty good job of snatching the old hope. But that brings me to this poll: Democrats 29%. Normally, here's what I've seen Democrats. Yes. The midterms can't get here fast enough. You're assuming that when the midterms come, that people are going to vote for you all.
Right.
They hate your guts. They can't stand you. They still don't even see you as a better option than Trump, which should have told you something in the first place. And I was listening to some Democrats the other day, and they're like, yes, well, we've got some good people, such as Buttigieg. And I'm like, oh, yeah, boy, that's
Chris
really
Matthews.
Yeah, that's Buttigieg. That's the guy. J.B. Pritzker. I'm like, your thoughts? 29%, the Democrats.
It was 27% on NBC News. It was even lower. And it was the lowest recorded ever on both networks. To put that in perspective, like, people need to understand, right? Like, that's not just a random number. That is the lowest random number that they've ever had for a political party in the way that people saw the political party. 27% on NBC News. That number is astonishingly low. I think Donald Trump's at like 47% in regards to his approval rating. And so you can compare the two. That's a 20-point difference. And to make it even worse, Democrats at one point are 20 points less than what they were under Joe Biden, when Joe Biden first got elected. And so when people are pointing out, dude, you guys are missing the boat. You're in a bubble. Something's wrong. And they're like, nope, it's just messaging. They'll come back. They'll come back. It's just messaging. They don't know that. Meaning they don't know that for the midterms. They're assuming that under normal circumstances, Republican president doesn't win the popular vote either. Right? Like, it was thought that Democrats had a mathematical forever advantage because of demographics. A Republican president has just won the election. Don't assume that you're just going to take it in the midterms. I agree with you. I don't think, like, they're going with this idea that we don't have to do anything, they'll come back. I don't know if people come back with 27% approval. What about you? I mean, do you think people come back with 27%?
I think there's a number. One thing, I think there's a lot of people who really fundamentally are furious at the Democrats and hate them because of Gaza. And that's something they don't talk about. I remember talking to a young guy. He was 30 years old, 29, something like that. And he was from New York. And he said, yeah, when I go back home and talk to all my friends, and I say, you vote for the Democrats. And he said, these are people who've been Democrats their whole life. Nah, why? Gaza.
Yeah.
That, wasn't there something like 26 or 30% of the people who voted for Biden, 30 something, there was a really high percentage of people who voted for Biden who wouldn't vote for Kamala. And they said it was over Gaza. And the fact of the matter is they went down with Gaza. You know what I mean? They went down. They went to the bottom of the sea with the anchor of genocide tied around their neck. to the very end. What are you going to do? I'm standing for Israel no matter what. Well, can we have a Palestinian person maybe speak at the, no, nothing. Can we at least have somebody perhaps give an alternative perspective? Absolutely not. Like literally escorted people out of the convention because they wanted to give an alternative perspective. And I don't think you come back from that. I think the people are so furious and angry at him. A certain percentage of people, there's no way back. And I think in the midterms, after the midterms, I think there'll be people starting to say, you know, what are we going to do here? There ain't no way to fix this party. They can't have, like, the Democrats can't, like, have a reasonable, real, and honest 2028 primary because the voters would surely pick somebody that they don't like. You know, so they can't ever do that again. And you know, here's the other thing. Trump has lost a few points. And I think Trump's one of his biggest weakness, besides the fact that he's like going back on everything he promised, which is really expected.
Yeah.
I don't, let me throw this at you. I don't think old Doge boy is doing him any favors. I think when I look, I'm like, well, you know, what the hell? Yes, the people who are libertarians who love Javier Milei in Argentina are, yay, you're firing lots of soccer moms at the Department of Agriculture. Woo-hoo, right? But I think there are a lot of other people looking at old Elon Musk saying, you know, what the hell is he doing? What? Nobody voted for this guy. And he seems to have carte blanche to do anything he wants. I can't stand the Democrats. So you can't say I'm just anti-Musk because he's not a Democrat. I hate the Democrats. Never vote for him. But I look at him and I'm like, what the hell are you doing wandering around the White House like you're in damn charge of everything? This is something highly dysfunctional. That makes, what he does is he makes the entire Trump administration look like a dysfunctional thing because there's some guy wandering around with seemingly an unlimited amount of power.
It's weird. Like I remember Malik at the time, I don't know about now, but he didn't like Musk being around Trump because he thought it was a liability for Trump to have Musk just kind of wandering about around his administration, or for that matter at the time around his campaign. I agree with you. I don't know how this is beneficial. I mean, you've affiliated yourself with somebody who's destroying or seems to be trying to destroy various government things, like you said, firing soccer moms, going after people working on Social Security or Medicaid. Okay, people love those things. And so the moment that you've associated yourself with trying to destroy those things or even firing people at those things, I don't know if that is a feather in your cap. I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't seen the polling on Elon Musk, but I can't see how a billionaire that is haunting, lurching around the White House is somehow a positive development when it is obvious he has no, let's say, ethical, legal. He has no education-based license to fire those people. Meaning, I'm trying to say this, and I'm saying it weird. He doesn't know enough about those government systems to do what he's doing. And I'm saying that because those government systems are massively complicated. I don't buy into this notion of Elon Musk is just genius that can look at anything and figure it out. I think that's nonsense. He's a person. And so it's like you're dealing with systems that you, in one sense, I don't even know if he believes in, but in two, that you don't have the prerequisite experience to go fire those people when you don't exactly know what those people are doing or whether those people are necessary for the functioning of whatever that entity is. If you are just a regular person, not affiliated with anybody, you may not like that. You may take issue with that. Okay, why is this guy doing that? Well, what experience does that, what does working at Twitter or, you know, running PayPal give you experience in order to go into government systems and fire people who you may actually need to do a job at that location? Why does he have experience to do this, and why is Donald Trump putting him in a position to do it? Yeah, it looks horrible. I mean, at least to me, I'm certainly not a Democrat. I don't have any. I'm not a fan of billionaires. If I have a bias, it's probably that. But that seems ludicrous, and yet there he is. Like RFK Jr., I get. Tulsi Gabbard, I get, but they're not acting this way.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too. they were assets that really, for Trump, they were political assets.
Yes.
RFK Jr. called, they talked to Trump. Hey, man, I got 5% in Pennsylvania. I got 5% in Ohio. It makes sense. Okay, come on in. I need that 5%. Tulsi Gabbard, there's a certain element out there that likes her, and you may see she knows what the hell's going on. You may have some issues with her in some areas, but she's got some strength that she brings. So you look at her and say, yeah, that makes sense. You're building a coalition here. Okay. You didn't go out and say, oh, by the way, Musk will be wandering around the White House, and okay, who knows what all he's doing? I don't know, really even know what he's doing. And he seems, I'm watching Musk run off at the mouth at the camera, and the president is sitting there doodling, drawing pictures or something, right? We're in the Oval Office, and the president's like, oh, look at this. And Musk is like, the way we need to run this government is this. And I'm thinking, why the hell is he the one doing that?
Yeah.
All he's got is a lot of money. And now you look like you have abdicated your responsibilities in certain areas and handed them over to this guy. And he really, part of it is this, it's a bad look. And you get this feeling that in April, a lot of people are going to say, hey, I filed and it says I'm supposed to get my Social Security check. And it's been 6 weeks, and usually it comes back. It's been 12, it's been 24. Hey, how come? Let me call in. There's nobody answers the phone. You get the feeling that at some point, people are going to say, why did I get my Social Security check? Oh, we didn't think about that. We fired everybody that issues them. Hey, I want to go to this park, and there's a sign on the park closed. Yeah, well, they didn't realize they laid off everybody who's in charge of handling those parks. Oh, let's face it. There's 330 million people in this country. The idea that there doesn't have to be a bureaucracy is pretty absurd, right? Yeah. And you're going to have things that need to be done. Hey, is there a hurricane coming? We don't really know. Why? Yeah, all the people in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration got laid off. So we think there's a hurricane that's going to hit, but we're not 100% sure. That things that normally happen, I get the feeling that at some point they're going to wake up and look back and say, oh boy, perhaps we shouldn't have, perhaps we shouldn't have fired the people that man the things that predict earthquakes and hurricanes and things like that. Maybe that was an error. Now that 1,000 people have died because we didn't know that was going to happen. National Forest Service, everybody's gone. Firefight, you know what I mean? You're like, shouldn't you have first done a year-long review? If you put Garland in charge, we're going to do Garland. You've got to reduce the federal government by 15%. We got to do a year-long review because we got to see what has to be there first to make it work. And then if some things have to be there, then I can go to the president and say, those things got to be there. Hey, if you get rid of them, here's the problem. I'm not just going to walk in the first day. Hey, everybody on that aisle's fired. And aisle 3, you guys, you're all fired too. This is going to come back to haunt Donald Trump, I think, at some point.
You may be entirely right. And this was for selfish reasons. I don't want it to, or I'm saying that poorly. I want it to, if indeed that's the way it turns out, right? Because I want people to be pissed off that they're not getting their check, or that it's slow or delayed, or their ability to get on Social Security has been hindered, or their ability to get Medicaid has been hindered. I want punishment for that stuff. What I don't want, and I guess the issue that I have, is I don't want Democrats just standing there pointing, saying, hey, come back to us because, Trump is destroying Social Security. Okay, well, that doesn't really say anything about Democrats and Social Security. That's just them pointing to something that they've destroyed or have blown up in an attempt and bid to try to get people to come back to the Democratic Party for votes in order to either fix or at the very least preserve the thing to which they are now pointing to, but they've done nothing in order to advance. I don't want them to do that. I don't want the sloshing back into the Democratic Party without them having a come to Jesus moment and without them being worth a damn. If Trump goes that far, then they will do that. They would do it. They do it every year. I mean, every 4 years, they just keep going back and forth, back and forth. Even the House of Representatives, it keeps going back and forth. People are looking for something that they're not getting in either political party. And when one political party effectively goes too far, the other one comes in and says, okay, now put us in. And when that one goes too far, okay, now put us in. And just go back and forth. That is an infuriating process because it gets nothing accomplished. as opposed to, okay, this party has a come to Jesus moment. They had an autopsy. They get that they don't represent what they say they are. They don't represent this kind of FDR working man thing, ethos that they claim they represent. That's what I would want. I don't see that happening. I mean, maybe you see it. I don't see it.
Well,
I don't
you know
see
what?
them.
I do think this, though. There is an indicator, and that's why I started with this. What you would expect is if Trump's numbers go down, the Democrats' numbers will go down, but they ain't. They are bottoming out. They are still going down because what do they have? What are they angry the most about? That Trump's trying to stop the war in Ukraine. You know what I mean? Are they upset about Israel? Are they upset about the censorship in Israel? No. So the reality is, all they would have to do is take a few opposite positions of Trump on something of substance, and they could get that swing. The problem is the things that they're most passionate about are either the things that they agree with him on or the few things that he's doing that's actually good.
Yeah.
So I think they're in a position now where the Democrats are so bad and have disgraced themselves to a point where I don't know. Like I said, I don't think people are going to go, well, they committed a genocide and I said I'd never vote for him again. But some people got fired out of the federal government, so maybe I will. I think it's possible that third party, that independents, that something like that could happen because could get elected, because I think the Democrats are thoroughly disgraced. And the best they can come up with is Pete Buttigieg. I'm telling you, I've said this jokingly. It will not surprise me if in 2028 they have a trans candidate. It won't surprise me. They've got that one trans woman that's in Congress. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I guarantee there's going to be people considering her for, or whoever, whatever that person is, you want to call them. There's going to be people saying that should be our vice president, if not president. It wouldn't shock me.
Chris Matthews wanted Pete Buttigieg to be the spokesman, the voice for the Democratic Party. He will get zero, like a negative 2% of the black vote. Like he did last time that he ran. He got like negative 2%. If they do that, that will be the dumbest. Like, the job of a political party is to win, first and foremost. Everything else is subordinate to them being able to win. If you do not win, you cannot get your political objectives accomplished. That's assuming you have political objectives. I think you're taking, I think I agree with you. These guys are in a cult. And so they don't really have political objectives in that sense, short of just getting elected in order to create their fundraising mechanism. Trump could go too far. I mean, right now he's sitting at what, like 47%, I think.
That's going to drop. That's going to drop.
That's going to drop. And if people get wind and say he is firing people, these are family members. This is not waste, fraud, and abuse. Like you said, if you do a year study where you are bringing people on to do evaluations in regards to where's the waste in a governmental system, okay, that makes sense. It's not immediate. So it's not like somebody comes in off the street, says, all right, we're firing all of these people.
Well, how about this? I got to add this. I got to add this to it. Throw this in it.
Mm-hmm.
Or literally gives me a letter. What did you do last week?
Yep.
They literally told federal employees, write a letter of what you did last week. And I thought, you're a damn idiot.
Yeah.
If you got 3 million employees and you're telling people, write me a letter of what you did last week, and that's the criteria I'm going to use to fire people, you are an idiot. Elon Musk is an idiot. Whether you will agree with him or not, you must have some empirical, objective criteria. Yeah, what'd you do last week? I was off. I had a twisted ankle. I had to go to the doctor. You're fired. These people are crazy. Well, let's get running, man. Jamal Thomas, he's got his great site. So we run all of these shows on both of our platforms. Don't forget, everybody, Jamal Thomas, make sure if you subscribe to my channel and not his, or his and not mine, that you cross subscribe so you won't miss all the stuff every morning from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's got all the great guests. You'll love his show. If you can, follow me at Rockfin, follow me at Rumble, follow me at Patreon, and all that stuff. Look, I'm closing my eyes. All I have to do is open my eyes, and it's literally scrolling in front of me, and I close my eyes so I can't see it and try to think of it. So I must be pretty tired. And of course, if you can afford it, we got Patreon, buy me a coffee. And, you know, buy me a coffee now, you can do just like Patreon. You can just do $5 or whatever. And you can make, there's a thing, just click it monthly. So buy me a coffee is a great option. PayPal, Cash App, all that stuff, if you can afford to keep the channel going. If not, just share this on all your social media platforms. Hey, how can they contribute to your channel, Jamal?
Liking, sharing, PayPal, Patreon, super chats, memberships, all those things are fair game and help keep the show ticking along.
Thank you. Thank you. Also, there's a join button and you can become a member of this channel. It's only $3, $4, $5. You choose how much for memberships. Thanks. We're out.